The summons, the message that changed everything. Captain Maya Reeves stood in the observation dome of the horizon's edge, watching the blue-green world of Kepler 100 SF rotate slowly beneath her ship. After 8 months of travel, her colony vessel had finally reached its destination. Below, 3,000 colonists were preparing for the most important journey of their lives, the descent to humanity's newest home. Maya was a veteran of deep space exploration, with 15 years of experience navigating the vast emptiness between stars. She had brown skin weathered by recycled ship air, close-cropped black hair streaked with gray, and eyes that held the steady calm of someone who had faced every crisis space could throw at a human. She wore the simple blue uniform of the Colonial Navigation Service, decorated only with her captain's insignia and a small patch showing Earth rising over Luna. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission," said her communications officer, Lieutenant James Park. The young man's voice carried an edge of concern that made Maya turn from the viewport. "Source? Unknown configuration, ma'am. The signal is powerful, much stronger than anything our colony has. And it's using concordate encryption protocols." Maya felt her stomach tighten. The Galactic Concordate. Every human who traveled the stars had heard of them, though few had direct contact. They claimed to be a benevolent alliance of 12 ancient civilizations dedicated to maintaining peace across the galaxy. In reality, Maya had learned through her own research, they were something else entirely. Put it through. The main display flickered to life, showing a being that resembled a floating jellyfish made of silver light. The Valorian spoke through a translation device that rendered its bioluminescent flashes into flat, emotionless human speech. "Human vessel Horizon's Edge. You are in violation of Concordate Space Management Protocol 7 Alpha. The Kepler 186 system falls within restricted expansion zones. You will halt all colonization activities immediately and prepare for inspection." Maya kept her expression neutral. "This is Captain Maya Reeves. Kepler 186 was listed as unclaimed territory in all public Concordate databases. We followed proper survey protocols and filed our colonization intent 3 years ago. We received no objection. The protocols have been updated. Your species does not have authorization for independent expansion beyond your designated development zone. You will comply with Concordate guidance or face consequences." The transmission ended abruptly. Maya stood silently for a moment, her mind racing through implications. Around her, the bridge crew waited for orders. "Lieutenant Park, send a secure message to Earth Command. Priority level maximum. Tell them the Concordate just claimed jurisdiction over Kepler 186 and threatened us with enforcement action." "Yes, ma'am. What should we tell the colonists?" Maya looked back at the planet below, where families were packing their belongings and children were excited about seeing real sky for the first time in their lives. These people had sold everything they owned for passage on this ship. They had spent 8 months in cold sleep, dreaming of a new world. She would not let some ancient aliens steal that dream without a fight. "Tell them the truth. We have a problem, but we're working on it." The fleet arrives 2 days later. The Concordate enforcement fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 186 system. Maya watched on her long-range scanners as 12 massive vessels took up positions around her colony ship. Each one dwarfed the horizon's edge like an ocean liner next to a fishing boat. The Valorian appeared on her screen again, this time accompanied by representatives from other Concordate species. There was a crystalline mind, a being that looked like living diamond with thoughts that moved like light through its faceted body. Next to it floated a deep-water scholar, an aquatic creature in a hovering tank of glowing fluid. The message was clear. The full authority of the Concordate had arrived. "Captain Reeves," the Valorian said, "you have been given sufficient time to comply. Your colonization of this system violates established order. You will immediately transfer all colonists to our transport vessels for relocation to an approved human settlement area." "And if we refuse," Maya asked quietly, "then we will be forced to implement corrective measures. The Concordate has maintained galactic peace for 10,000 years. We will not allow one primitive species to destabilize that order." Maya had prepared for this moment. She had spent the past 2 days reviewing every piece of information humanity had gathered about the Concordate over the past 30 years of contact. What she discovered had confirmed her worst suspicions. "Before I respond," Maya said, "I'd like to share something with you. Computer display file Reeves Alpha 7. A new holographic projection appeared in the space between the ships. It showed footage from 15 years ago, the Tarkin colony in the Epsilon Eridani system. The settlement had been founded by the peaceful Denari people, one of the younger species in the Concordat. The recording showed Denari families farming, building homes, raising children under an orange sun. Then the recording showed what happened when the Denari tried to expand beyond their designated development zone. Concordat enforcement ships appeared. Buildings were destroyed. Farms burned. The Denari who resisted were killed. Those who survived were relocated to a smaller, resource-poor world where they would remain dependent on Concordat trade for basic necessities. This footage was recovered from a Denari data cache, Maya said. The Concordat told the galaxy that Tarkin colony failed due to poor planning. They lied. You destroyed it because the Denari were becoming self-sufficient. The Valorian silver light pulsed in what might have been anger. You do not understand the complexities of maintaining galactic order. Some species require guidance to prevent them from harming themselves or others. I understand perfectly, Maya replied. The Concordat doesn't maintain peace. You maintain control. You keep younger species weak and dependent so that you can exploit their resources and labor. You've built an empire and disguised it as a charity. She pulled up more files. Records of protection fees charged to member species. Evidence of Concordat corporations given monopolies on vital technologies. Documentation of how species that resisted were labeled as dangerous and sanctioned until they submitted. Humanity reviewed your membership agreement, Maya continued. We saw the terms: complete submission to Concordat economic regulations, restrictions on military development, mandatory technology sharing that only flows one direction, and buried in the fine print, permanent designation as a developing civilization with no path to equal status. Those terms ensure stability, the crystalline mind said, its voice like singing glass. Young species cannot be trusted with unlimited freedom. History proves this. Whose history? Maya shot back. Show me evidence. Show me one case where a species was given real independence and used it to harm others. The silence that followed told her everything. The Concordat had no such evidence because they never allowed any species to be truly independent. The decision Maya took a deep breath. What she said next would determine the future of not just her colonists, but potentially all of humanity's relationship with the galaxy. On behalf of the Horizon's Edge and its 3,000 colonists, I formally refuse the Concordat's jurisdiction. Kepler 186 was unclaimed territory when we arrived. We have harmed no one, threatened no one, and violated no legitimate law. We will continue our colonization as planned. The Valorian's light flared bright. You are making a grave mistake, Captain. One small ship cannot stand against the Concordat. You're right, Maya agreed. One ship can't, but we're not alone. She activated a signal that had been carefully hidden in her earlier transmission to Earth. Across the Kepler 186 system, space began to shimmer as ships emerged from hyperspace. Not just human vessels, though there were plenty of those, including 3 heavy cruisers from Earth's defense fleet, but also ships from a dozen other species. The Denari sent their entire merchant marine. The Kelthir contributed their mining vessels, retrofitted with weapons. Even some Concordat member species had sent private ships crewed by volunteers who were tired of living under alien authority. Within minutes, the Concordat fleet was outnumbered 2 to 1. How? The crystalline mind asked, genuine confusion in its crystalline voice. You've been oppressing younger species for so long that you forgot they could communicate with each other, Maya said. For the past decade, humanity has been quietly talking with every species that felt the Concordat's boot on their neck. We shared information. We coordinated. We waited for the right moment. She gestured at the planet below. This is that moment. Kepler 186 will become the first free colony in Concordat space. Not because we're stronger than you, we're not. But because enough species have finally decided to say no. Admiral Kira Osi's voice came over the general channel. The Earth Defense Fleet Commander spoke with the authority of someone who had fought in actual wars, not just enforcement actions against helpless colonies. Concordat vessels. This is Admiral Ose commanding Earth Defense Force Task Group 7. You are ordered to withdraw from the Kepler 186 system immediately. Any hostile action will be met with overwhelming force. We do not seek war, but we will not allow you to threaten human civilians. The standoff stretched for long minutes. Maya could see the Concordate commanders conferring, probably trying to decide if they were willing to start a battle they might not win. Finally, the Valorian spoke again. You have won nothing, Captain Reeves. The Concordate Council will respond to this rebellion. They will bring judgment upon all who defy galactic order. Then we'll see them at the trial, Maya said calmly. Because unlike you, we actually believe in justice. The Concordate fleet withdrew, but Maya knew this was just the beginning. Within a week, she received the formal summons. She was ordered to appear before the Concordate Council on the Pinnacle, their massive judgment station at the galaxy's center. She would stand trial for crimes against galactic stability. Maya accepted immediately. She had no intention of hiding. Instead, she would take this fight directly to the beings who had oppressed countless species for thousands of years. She would make them answer for their crimes. As the horizon's edge began final preparations for colonization, Maya stood once more in the observation dome. Below, shuttles were descending to the surface, carrying colonists who would build the first free human settlement beyond Concordate control. Computer, she said quietly. Begin recording. Personal log, Captain Maya Reeves. She stared at the planet that represented everything humanity had come to the stars to find. Freedom, opportunity, a chance to prove themselves among the civilizations of the galaxy. They think this is about one colony on one world. They don't understand that we're not just humans anymore. We're the voice of every species they've silenced. And that voice is saying something very simple. Maya's reflection in the viewport showed a slight smile. No more. The truth unveiled, journey to the Pinnacle. The transport vessel that carried Maya Reeves to the Pinnacle was designed to remind passengers of their insignificance. Built by the Concordate specifically for transporting accused parties to trial, it featured cramped quarters, dim lighting, and no viewports except in the common area, where passengers could see the massive judgment station growing larger with each passing day. Maya shared the transport with her small delegation. Dr. Amara Chen, a xenoanthropologist who had studied Concordate culture for 20 years, sat reviewing files on her datapad. Lieutenant James Park, who had volunteered to accompany Maya despite knowing it could end his career, practiced his testimony. And Marcus Webb, a former Concordate translator who had defected to humanity 5 years ago, stared out the viewport with an expression that mixed fear and determination. They built the Pinnacle to break your spirit before you even enter the council chamber, Marcus said quietly. He was human, but had spent 15 years working for the Concordate before discovering what they truly were. Look at it. Really look. Maya joined him at the viewport. The Pinnacle hung in space like a dark jewel, a station so massive it had its own gravitational field. 12 enormous spires radiated from a central sphere, each one representing one of the founding Concordate species. The architecture was deliberately overwhelming, designed to make any visitor feel like an insect before giants. It's meant to inspire awe, Dr. Chen observed, joining them. Classic authoritarian architecture. Make the individual feel powerless before the state. Did it work on you? Maya asked Marcus. The former translator shook his head. Not anymore. Once you see through the illusion, you realize it's just a building. Stone and metal and artificial gravity. The Concordate wants you to believe they're eternal and unchangeable, like mountains or stars. But they're not. They're just people, beings, who've held power for a long time and convinced themselves they deserve it. The transport docked at one of the lower spires. As they disembarked, Maya noticed other vessels bringing in delegations from across the galaxy. Some were Concordate members coming to witness the trial. Others were representatives from species who had heard about humanity's defiance and wanted to see what would happen. The receiving area was deliberately humiliating. While Concordate members were greeted by diplomatic staff and escorted to comfortable quarters, Maya's group was processed like cargo. Tailboard functionary, a creature that resembled a floating brain in a crystalline case, checked their credentials with obvious disdain. Human delegation. Trial Chamber 7. You have 6 hours to prepare. Do not leave your assigned quarters. Do not attempt to contact outside parties. Violation of these rules will result in immediate judgment against you. Their quarters were small and sterile, clearly designed to house prisoners rather than guests. But Maya had expected this. Every indignity, every slight, every calculated insult was part of the Concordate's strategy. They wanted her to feel defeated before the trial even began. "Dr. Chen," Maya said, settling into the hard chair that served as the room's only furniture, "tell me about the council members we'll face." The xenoanthropologist pulled up holographic profiles. "The Valorians you've already met. They're energy beings who consider themselves the most evolved species in existence, extremely arrogant but also highly logical. If you can break through their assumptions, they're capable of changing their position. The crystalline minds think in terms of thousands of years. They make decisions very slowly and consider short-term consequences irrelevant. They'll be the hardest to convince because they genuinely believe their system works. They've watched it function for 10,000 years. The deep-water scholars are aquatic and highly analytical. They approach everything like a mathematical problem. Show them the numbers. Show them the logical contradictions in concordate policy, and they might listen." Dr. Chen continued through the 12 founding species, detailing their psychology, their biases, their pressure points. Maya absorbed it all, building a mental map of how to approach each being. "What about allies?" Lieutenant Park asked. "Are any of the council species likely to support us?" Marcus answered that question. "The Concordate has been fracturing for decades. The younger council members, species who joined only a few centuries ago, are increasingly uncomfortable with how newer species are treated. The Etharians, for instance, have been quietly objecting to expansion restrictions, but they won't speak openly against the founding members." "Then we need to make them speak," Maya said. "We need to create a situation where staying silent becomes impossible." The trial begins. Trial Chamber 7 was built in the traditional Concordate style, a vast circular room with the accused standing in the center, while their judges surrounded them on raised platforms. Holographic displays filled the air above, ready to show evidence. The lighting was designed to keep the accused in shadow, while the council members were bathed in light. Maya walked to the center platform with her head high. She wore her Colonial Navigation Service uniform, with every commendation she had earned in 15 years of service. She would not pretend to be ashamed of who she was or what humanity had done. The 12 council members materialized on their platforms. The Valorian spoke first, its silver light pulsing with authority. "Captain Maya Reeves of the human species, you stand accused of violating Concordate Space Management Protocol 7 Alpha, inciting rebellion among member species, and threatening galactic stability. How do you respond to these charges?" Maya looked up at the assembled beings, creatures from 12 different worlds, representing civilizations that had crossed the stars while humanity was still learning to use fire. For a moment, she felt the weight of their age and power. Then she remembered the Denari children she had seen in those recordings. Remembered families torn apart by Concordate enforcement. Remembered 3,000 colonists who had trusted her to protect their dreams. "I reject your authority to bring these charges," Maya said clearly. "The Concordate claims to represent galactic civilization, but you represent only yourselves. You are not peacekeepers. You are conquerors who have disguised conquest as protection." A ripple of shock moved through the chamber. Apparently, few accused parties had ever opened with direct defiance. The crystalline mind's voice resonated like struck crystal. "You are confused about the nature of galactic order. The Concordate has prevented wars, facilitated trade, and guided younger species toward peaceful development for 10,000 years. Have you?" Maya activated her own holographic display. "Dr. Chen, please show the council our research." The xenoanthropologist stepped forward, and the chamber filled with data. Charts showing economic exploitation, records of military actions against peaceful colonies, documentation of how the Concordate systematically kept younger species in subordinate positions. "Over the past 30 years, Dr. Chen said, humanity has studied every publicly available record of Concordate history. We've also obtained classified documents from sources who will remain protected. The pattern is undeniable. The Concordate maintains power through carefully controlled dependence. New images appeared. The Denari colony at Tarkin, destroyed for becoming self-sufficient. The Kelthia mining operations, forced to sell resources at below-market rates to Concordate corporations. The Medrani research stations, shut down when their scientists developed technologies that threatened Concordat monopolies. You call this guidance? Maya asked. You call this peace? The Deepwater Scholar's tank bubbled with agitation. These are individual incidents taken out of context. The Concordat makes difficult decisions to maintain order. Sometimes sacrifices are necessary. Sacrifices by whom? Lieutenant Park spoke up, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. The Concordat species never seem to be the ones sacrificing. You restrict our expansion while claiming new territories for yourselves. You limit our military development while maintaining massive fleets. You control our trade while your corporations profit from our labor. These accusations are without merit, the Valorian declared. The Concordat treats all member species fairly within the framework of their development level. Maya smiled grimly. This was the moment she had been waiting for. Then let's talk about development levels. Computer. Display Concordat classification system, internal version. A gasp rippled through the observation galleries as a classified document appeared in the holographic display. It showed the Concordat's true ranking system, not based on genuine development, but on political reliability and economic exploitation potential. Marcus Webb stepped forward. I obtained this document during my time as a Concordat translator. It's authentic and current as of 6 months ago. Notice how species are rated not on technology or culture, but on compliance and resource value. The document was damning. It showed how the Concordat deliberately kept certain species classified as developing, despite their advanced capabilities, simply because reclassifying them would reduce Concordat control. It showed quotas for resource extraction and labor allocation. It showed formulas for calculating optimal exploitation rates, how much could be taken from a species without triggering rebellion. This is fabricated evidence, the crystalline mind insisted. But its light flickered uncertainly, is it? Maya pulled up communication logs, showing Concordat officials discussing the very policies outlined in the document. These are your own words, your own admissions that the classification system is designed to maintain control, not to help species develop. More evidence appeared, testimony from Concordat bureaucrats who had grown disgusted with the system, economic analyses showing massive wealth flowing from younger species to the founding members, military records documenting enforcement actions that were really just attacks on civilians who resisted exploitation. The chamber descended into chaos. Council members shouted at each other in a dozen languages. Observation gallery delegates began broadcasting the evidence to their home worlds. Security forces moved to shut down the transmissions, but Marcus had already ensured the data was being sent through encrypted channels that the Concordat couldn't block. Order, the Valorian commanded, its light flaring bright enough to hurt Maya's eyes. This trial will maintain proper decorum. This isn't a trial, Maya said quietly, but her voice carried through the chamber. A trial requires impartial judges. None of you are impartial. You're the accused pretending to be judges. She turned slowly, addressing not just the council members, but the hundreds of delegates. Watching from the galleries, the Concordat committed its first crime 10,000 years ago when it decided that only the oldest species deserved true freedom. Every action since then has been an attempt to justify that original sin. You built a system where age equals authority, where might makes right, where the strong exploit the weak and call it guidance. But here's what you didn't understand about humanity. We've seen this before. Our own history is full of empires that justified oppression with claims of bringing civilization to primitives. We know how that story ends. The oppressed eventually refuse to stay oppressed. The exploited eventually demand justice. And the lies that maintained control eventually collapse under the weight of truth. Maya looked directly at the Valorian. You attacked our home when we were too weak to fight back effectively. You thought you could force us into your system. Instead, you taught us exactly what the Concordat really is. And now we're sharing that lesson with every species you've been oppressing. The Deepwater Scholar's analytical voice cut through the noise. Even if we accept your characterization of past actions, what alternative do you propose? Galactic civilization requires coordination and structure. Without the Concordat, there would be chaos, would there? Dr. Chen pulled up new data. Humanity has been studying independent species, civilizations that refused Concordat membership. Do you know what we found? Most of them are peaceful, prosperous, and cooperative. They trade freely with each other. They share technology voluntarily. They resolve disputes through negotiation, not force. The only violence they experience comes from concordant enforcement actions, trying to bring them into compliance. She displayed statistics comparing concordant-controlled regions to independent space. The independent regions showed higher economic growth, more technological innovation, and significantly less conflict. The chaos you fear is a myth you created to justify your control, Dr. Chen concluded. Real cooperation doesn't require domination. Real peace doesn't require one group holding all the power. A new voice joined the debate. In the observation gallery, a delegate from the Etherian cooperative stood up. The insectoid being's wings buzzed with agitation as it spoke. I can remain silent no longer. The Etherian people joined the Concordat 300 years ago, believing we would be equal members. Instead, we have watched our resource rights signed away, our expansion limited, and our objections dismissed. The humans speak truth. We are not members. We are subjects. Another delegate stood, a Myrani researcher. My people developed quantum communication technology 40 years ago. The Concordat classified it as dangerous and shut down our research. Last year, we discovered Concordat corporations were using that same technology for their own profit. We were silenced so they could steal our work. More voices joined in. Species after species stood to share their own stories of exploitation and control. The carefully maintained fiction of Concordat benevolence was crumbling in real time. The Valorian's light pulsed with what might have been anger or fear. These accusations are based on misunderstandings and distortions. The Concordat has acted in good faith to maintain galactic stability. Then open your records, Maya challenged. Make all Concordat documents public. Let every species see exactly how decisions are made and who benefits. If your actions are truly benevolent, transparency should prove it. The silence that followed told Maya everything she needed to know. The Concordat would never voluntarily reveal the full extent of their exploitation, because doing so would destroy any remaining legitimacy. I thought not, Maya said softly, because you know that sunlight is the best disinfectant. The moment everyone sees how you really operate, your power ends. She turned to face the observation galleries one final time. The Concordat wants to punish humanity for refusing to submit. But we're not asking you to take our side in a conflict. We're asking you to make your own choice. Do you want to remain in a system built on exploitation? Or do you want to build something better? A genuine galactic community based on cooperation and mutual respect. The chamber erupted in discussion. Delegates were arguing with each other, contacting their home governments, debating what to do. The Concordat had lost control of its own trial, and Maya knew they had just won the opening battle. A new order, the breaking point. The Concordat Council attempted to restore order for 3 hours. They suspended the proceedings 4 times. They threatened to clear the observation galleries. They even tried to cut power to Maya's holographic displays. Nothing worked. The truth had escaped, and it was spreading through the galaxy faster than light. Maya stood in the center of the chamber, watching the chaos unfold with calm satisfaction. Around her, council members argued with each other in heated exchanges that the translation systems struggled to keep up with. In the galleries, delegates were broadcasting live updates to their homeworlds. The Pinnacle's communication systems were overwhelmed with incoming messages from across the galaxy. Lieutenant Park touched Maya's arm. Captain, we're receiving reports from Earth. 17 more species have formally requested defense pacts with humanity in the last hour alone. The Concordat's client species are refusing to follow orders. There are protests on a dozen worlds. Dr. Chen was monitoring different channels. The economic impact is already visible. 3 major Concordat trade networks have suspended operations because member species are refusing to ship goods under exploitative contracts. The Kelthir Miners Guild just announced they're withholding mineral exports until their contracts are renegotiated on fair terms. Maya allowed herself a small smile. This was exactly what she had hoped for. Not a military confrontation, but a peaceful revolution driven by shared information and coordinated resistance. The Valorian's light suddenly flared with desperate intensity. Enough, this proceeding is suspended. Captain Reeves, you and your delegation are hereby detained pending further investigation into your illegal acquisition of classified materials. Security forces began moving toward Maya's position. They were heavily armed beings from various concordant client species, trained to enforce council authority without question. On whose authority? Maya asked calmly. The authority of the Galactic Concordant Council, which has maintained order for 10,000 years. That authority no longer exists. The statement hung in the air like a blade. The Valorian's light flickered in confusion. What are you talking about? Maya gestured toward the observation galleries. Look around you. Your member species are leaving. Right now, delegations from 43 worlds are boarding ships to return home. They're not coming back. The Concordant Council can issue all the orders it wants, but if no one follows them, you're just 12 beings sitting in an empty room pretending to rule a galaxy. She was right. The galleries were emptying rapidly as delegates decided they wanted no part of what came next. Even some of the council members' own staff were quietly leaving their posts. The crystalline mind's voice cracked with something that might have been fear. You are destroying 10,000 years of stability. Without the Concordate, there will be wars, chaos, suffering on a scale you cannot imagine. Maybe, Maya acknowledged. Or maybe there will be something better. We'll never know until we try. The security forces reached Maya's position, but before they could act, new alarms began sounding throughout the pinnacle. The station's defensive systems detected multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace in the surrounding area. Admiral Kira Osei's voice boomed through the chamber's communication system. Concordat Council, this is Admiral Osei commanding a joint defensive fleet of 67 vessels representing 23 different species. We are here to ensure the safe departure of Captain Reeves and all delegates who wish to leave the pinnacle. Any attempt to detain or harm civilians will be met with immediate defensive action. The holographic displays shifted to show exterior views. The space around the pinnacle was filling with ships, not just human vessels, but a diverse fleet representing species from across the galaxy. The Denari had sent their entire merchant marine, now armed and ready to fight. The Kelthir contributed mining ships retrofitted with defensive weapons. Even some Concordant member species had sent independent vessels, crewed by volunteers. You brought a military fleet to threaten the Concordant Council? The Deepwater scholar asked, its analytical mind clearly struggling to process this development. We brought witnesses, Maya corrected, and protection for those witnesses. The only threat here comes from you, the threat of violence against people who dare to speak truth. The Valorian made one last attempt to maintain control. This is an act of war against galactic authority. Every species that participates will be sanctioned, isolated, cut off from concordant resources and protection. What protection? A new voice entered the conversation. In the gallery, an elderly delegate from the Etherian Cooperative stood with wings spread in a gesture of defiance. For 300 years we have paid for concordant protection. In that time, the only attacks we faced came from concordant enforcement actions. We don't need your protection. We need protection from you. Another delegate stood, a young Mirani scientist. My grandmother helped develop quantum communication technology. She spent her final years watching concordant corporations profit from her stolen work. How many generations must sacrifice their dreams to your greed before we say enough? One by one, delegates who had stayed in the galleries stood to speak. Each one shared a story of exploitation, broken promises, or casual cruelty from the beings who claimed to protect them. The Concordant Council sat in stunned silence as their carefully constructed mythology collapsed around them. The new Alliance Maya didn't wait for the Council to respond. She activated her personal communication device and broadcast on all frequencies. My name is Captain Maya Reeves. 6 hours ago I stood trial for refusing to submit to concordant authority. I was accused of threatening galactic stability. The Concordant wanted you to see me punished as a warning to anyone else who might resist their control. She paused, letting her words carry to every ship in the system and beyond, to the worlds that were watching this historic moment. Instead, you've witnessed something different. You've seen evidence of systematic exploitation. You've heard testimony from dozens of species about broken promises and stolen resources. You've learned that the Concordat's peace is built on oppression, and their stability requires your submission. Maya walked slowly around the center platform, her movements calm and deliberate. I'm not here to tell you what to do. Humanity has no desire to replace one empire with another. We don't want to rule you or control you or tell you how to live. We just want what every sentient being deserves, the freedom to make our own choices and the right to defend ourselves when threatened. She looked up at the council members. These ancient beings who had ruled the galaxy for so long, they forgot what it meant to be challenged. The Concordat will tell you that without them, there will be chaos. They'll predict wars and suffering and collapse. They'll say you need their guidance and protection. But I ask you to consider this. Who benefits from your fear? Who profits when you believe you're too weak or too primitive to govern yourselves? Dr. Chen stepped forward, her scientific mind adding weight to Maya's words. Humanity spent decades studying independent species, civilizations that refused Concordat membership. We found thriving communities, peaceful cooperation and mutual respect. The chaos the Concordat predicts only exists in their propaganda. Reality proves that free peoples can work together without requiring masters. Lieutenant Park activated new displays showing maps of independent space. We've already been in contact with 47 species who operate outside Concordat control. Together, we've drafted a new agreement, a genuine alliance based on voluntary cooperation rather than forced submission. The Independent Systems Charter appeared in holographic form. Maya had helped write it during the long journey to the pinnacle, working with representatives from dozens of species who were tired of living under Concordat authority. The charter was simple. Member species retained complete sovereignty over their own territory. They could expand freely into unclaimed space. They could develop any technology they chose. They could form their own alliances and make their own decisions. The only requirements were peaceful dispute resolution and mutual defense against aggression. This is what a real galactic community looks like, Maya said. No hierarchies based on age. No exploitation disguised as protection. No permanent underclass of species deemed too primitive for real freedom. Just cooperation among equals who choose to work together because it benefits everyone. The Valorian's light had dimmed to barely a glow. You cannot simply dissolve 10,000 years of structure. The Concordat provides essential services: trade coordination, dispute resolution, resource allocation, navigation standards. Without these systems, galactic civilization will fragment. Then provide those services voluntarily, Maya challenged. If the Concordat truly offers value, species will choose to work with you. But they should have the choice to seek alternatives if your services are inadequate or too expensive. She pulled up economic data showing the true costs of Concordat membership. The fees, restrictions, and mandatory contracts added up to staggering amounts of wealth flowing from younger species to the founding members. A free market in governance, Dr. Chen added. If the Concordat wants to coordinate trade, offer that service at fair rates and let species decide if it's worth the cost. If you want to mediate disputes, build a reputation for fairness that makes beings want to use your services. Compete on merit instead of monopoly. The concept was revolutionary in a galaxy that had known only hierarchical control for 10,000 years. But Maya could see understanding dawning on some of the council members' faces, particularly the deep-water scholars, whose analytical minds could recognize the logic. What you're proposing is untested chaos, the crystalline mind insisted. But its certainty was wavering. Everything is untested until someone tries it, Maya replied. 10,000 years ago, the Concordat was untested. You convinced the galaxy to try your vision. All we're asking is that you let us try ours. The vote, what happened next, surprised everyone, including Maya. The deep-water scholar's tank bubbled with agitation for several moments before it spoke. I propose a vote. The Concordat Council should formally acknowledge that its current structure is unsustainable and commit to fundamental reform. Member species should have the option to remain under current terms, negotiate new relationships, or leave entirely without sanction. The Valorian's light flared. You cannot be serious. This would destroy everything we've built. What we've built is already destroyed, the deep-water scholar replied, with brutal honesty. Captain Reeves is correct. We can issue all the orders we want, but if no one follows them, we have no authority. Better to acknowledge reality and adapt than to cling to a fiction that no longer serves us. A second council member spoke, an ancient being called a Voidwalker that existed partially outside normal space-time. I have observed the patterns. The human is correct about historical cycles. Empires that refuse to evolve eventually collapse through force. Empires that adapt can transform into something sustainable. We stand at that choice point. Adaptation means surrender, the crystalline mind protested. Adaptation means survival, the Voidwalker countered. I have existed for 8,000 years. I have seen empires rise and fall across this galaxy. The Concordate's choice is simple. Evolve voluntarily now or be forced to evolve later through conflict we cannot win. The debate continued for hours, but Maya could see the tide turning. Some council members were genuinely convinced by the arguments. Others simply recognized that they no longer had the power to maintain the status quo. The fleet surrounding the pinnacle made clear that any attempt at enforcement would trigger a war the Concordate couldn't guarantee winning. Finally, as the station's artificial day cycle moved toward evening, the Valorian spoke with a light that had lost all its earlier arrogance. The Concordate Council acknowledges that fundamental restructuring is necessary. We propose a transition period of 1 standard year, during which all current agreements remain in force. But member species may negotiate new terms or declare independence without penalty. After 1 year, we will convene a new constitutional assembly, representing all species who wish to participate in building a revised galactic framework. It wasn't everything Maya had hoped for, but it was a start. More importantly, it gave species the time and freedom to make their own choices about their futures. Humanity accepts this proposal, Maya said formally. We look forward to participating in the Constitutional Assembly as equals. Other delegates voiced their agreement. Some species wanted to negotiate new relationships with the Concordate. Others declared immediate independence. A few particularly older members who had benefited from the exploitative system objected strongly. But they were now the minority and they knew it. The trial of Captain Maya Reeves officially ended without verdict. The charges were dismissed as moot, given the Concordate's acknowledgement that its authority structure required fundamental reform. Maya and her delegation were free to leave the pinnacle whenever they chose. As they prepared to depart, the Valorian approached Maya privately. Its silver light was subdued, almost humble. You have destroyed 10,000 years of order in a single day. Maya met its energy form without flinching. I didn't destroy it. I revealed that it was already destroyed. You just hadn't admitted it yet. A system built on exploitation and lies was never truly orderly. It was just suppression disguised as peace. What happens now? Do humans intend to build their own empire? No, Maya said firmly. We've seen where that leads. We just want to be free and to help others find their own freedom. The rest will work itself out. The Valorian pulsed thoughtfully. Perhaps you are right. Perhaps we have held power for so long that we forgot why we claimed it in the first place. 10,000 years ago, we believed we were preventing chaos. Somewhere along the way, preventing chaos became maintaining control, and maintaining control became an end unto itself. It's not too late to remember your original purpose, Maya offered. The galaxy still needs coordination and cooperation, but it needs invitation, not domination. 6 months later, Maya stood once again in the observation dome of the horizon's edge, watching Kepler 186f rotate beneath her ship. The colony was thriving now. 3,000 humans building a new civilization under an alien sun. But they weren't alone anymore. 2 other colonies shared the system now. The Denari had established agricultural settlements in the outer regions. The Kelthir were mining asteroids in the inner belt. The 3 species worked together, traded freely, and resolved the occasional dispute through conversation rather than force. It was a small example of what Maya hoped would spread across the galaxy. Captain, incoming transmission from Admiral Osei, Lieutenant Park announced. He looked healthier now, less burdened by the weight of impossible choices. Maya accepted the call. Admiral Osei appeared, her expression mixing satisfaction with concern. Captain Reeves, I thought you'd want to know. The Independent Systems Alliance now includes 112 species. 47 of them are former Concordate members who negotiated new relationships or declared independence. 65 were independent species who joined to coordinate mutual defense and trade. That's excellent news, Maya said. What's the concern I hear in your voice? Some of the Concordate founding species are not accepting the transition gracefully. The crystalline minds have withdrawn entirely into their home system and refuse all contact. The Valorians are trying to maintain a reduced version of the old system, with species that still depend on them. And there are reports of rogue enforcement fleets conducting unauthorized raids on independent colonies. Maya nodded slowly. She had expected resistance. 10,000 years of control didn't vanish overnight. How is Earth Command responding? Cautiously. President Adeyemi wants to avoid open conflict, but she's also committed to protecting the new alliance members. We're expanding the defense fleet and establishing rapid response teams to assist colonies under threat. Good. And the Constitutional Assembly? Scheduled to convene in 6 months at a neutral station in independent space. 207 species have committed to sending delegates. Dr. Chen has been nominated to serve on the drafting committee. Maya felt a surge of pride. Dr. Chen deserved that honor. Her research and advocacy had been instrumental in exposing the Concordate's true nature. Tell her I said congratulations. And Admiral, thank you for believing in this when it seemed impossible. Osei smiled. You gave us something to believe in, Captain. The idea that we don't have to accept oppression just because it's ancient. That species can govern themselves without requiring masters. That's worth fighting for. The transmission ended, and Maya returned to watching the planet below. Her datapad chimed with a message, the daily status report from the colony's Leadership Council. Food production was ahead of schedule. The educational system was attracting students from all 3 species. A young human girl had made first contact with a Denari child, and now they played together every day despite not sharing a common language, these small moments of cooperation and understanding. This was what made the fight worthwhile. Marcus Webb joined her at the viewport. The former translator had stayed with the colony, using his knowledge of Concordate culture to help train diplomats for the new alliance. Do you think it will work? He asked quietly. Can all these species really cooperate without someone forcing them to? Maya considered the question honestly. I don't know. Maybe we'll fail. Maybe the Concordate was right that younger species need guidance. Maybe freedom leads to chaos. She turned to face him, her expression fierce with determination. But we'll never know unless we try. And I'd rather risk failure while free than guarantee survival as slaves. The Concordate offered us 10,000 years of stability, purchased with submission. We're choosing to build something different, maybe more fragile, definitely more uncertain, but ours. Below them, the 3 colonies on Kepler 186f lit up as their artificial day cycle began. Humans, Denari and Kelthir starting another day of building their shared future. It wasn't perfect. There were disputes and misunderstandings and occasional friction, but they worked through it together as equals. You know what I think? Marcus said, watching the light spread across the colony sites. I think the Concordate's biggest mistake was believing that order requires hierarchy. Real stability comes from mutual respect and shared benefit. They could have built that 10,000 years ago, but they chose control instead. Then we'll build what they should have, Maya replied. A galaxy where species cooperate because they choose to, not because they're forced. Where differences are respected, not punished. Where younger civilizations can grow and develop without artificial limits imposed by their elders. She pulled up a holographic map showing the Independent Systems Alliance. 112 species scattered across the galaxy, connected by choice rather than compulsion. It was fragile and new and uncertain, but it was theirs. The Concordate gave us 10,000 years of their vision, Maya said softly. Now let's see what the next 10,000 can be with ours. The map glowed with possibility, each star representing a world where beings had chosen freedom over security, cooperation over control, and hope over fear. Not all of them would succeed. Some might fail, might fall into conflict, might prove that the Concordate's warnings had merit, but they would face those challenges as free peoples, making their own choices and accepting responsibility for the consequences, and that, Maya thought as she watched her colony beginning another day, was worth everything they had risked to achieve. The end. If you enjoyed this story of human vengeance, check out our other HFY tales. Click here for more.